The sun shone brightly over New Sol, the human colony on planet Novus. The artificial weather system made the day perfect, not too hot, not too cold. In Harmony Park, trees from Earth grew next to strange purple plants from this new world. Jisoo sat on a bench under a tree. She was 18 years old with dark skin that had been changed by her parents before she was born. The extra melanin protected people on Novus from the planet's strong radiation. Jisoo's skin was not a fashion choice. It was needed to live safely on this world. She looked at her tablet, studying for her xenobiology class. Jisoo wanted to be a diplomat one day, to talk with the alien Drakkar and other species. Her small drone, a gift from her father, floated nearby. It was round and silver, about the size of her palm. "Scan this plant for me, Dot," Jisoo said to her drone. The drone beeped and moved to the purple plant. A blue light came from it as it collected data. Jisoo smiled. The drone was more advanced than it looked. Her father, Captain Kim Hyunwoo, made sure she had the best technology. He led the colony's security forces and worked hard to help humans, and Drakkar lived together peacefully. Across the park, Officer Taeho walked with his cybernetic dog. The dog was part machine, with metal legs and special sensors. It could find drugs, weapons, and track people better than any normal dog. Taeho did not like the changes humans were making to themselves to live on new planets. He thought it was wrong. When Taeho saw Jisoo, he frowned. Her darker skin made him think she was one of the modified people, humans who had changed their bodies even more than necessary. Some had extra fingers for working in space or eyes that could see in the dark. Taeho thought they were no longer truly human. Jisoo's drone, Dot, suddenly detected something interesting. It flew higher to get a better scan, not knowing it had entered a restricted area. A small alarm beeped on Taeho's wrist device. "Unauthorized drone in security zone," his device said. Taeho looked up and saw the drone. Then he looked at Jisoo. His face became hard with anger. "You," he shouted, walking quickly toward her. "Modified girl. Is that your drone?" Jisoo was surprised. She stood up, confused by his anger. "Yes, that's my drone. I'm sorry if it went somewhere it shouldn't." "You people think you can do whatever you want," Taeho said. His voice was loud, and people in the park started to watch. "ID. Now." Jisoo reached for her ID card, but she moved slowly. She was nervous about Taeho's anger. "Too slow," Taeho said. He unhooked his dog's leash. "K9, detain the modified." The dog stood still. Its computer brain analyzed the situation. Jisoo showed no signs of being dangerous. She was just a student in the park. The dog's programming included ethics routines. It should not hurt people without good reason. "K9, I gave you an order," Taeho shouted. People around the park had taken out their phones. They were recording everything. An older woman stepped forward. "Officer, she's just a girl studying." The drone made a mistake. "Is this necessary?" "Stay out of this," Taeho said. "These modified break rules all the time. They think their special bodies make them above the law." Jisoo finally found her ID card. "Officer, here's my ID. I'm Jisoo Kim. I'm a student at New Seoul Academy. My drone didn't mean to fly into a restricted area." Taeho snatched the ID card. As he looked at it, his face changed. The name Kim was common, but the address was in the leadership district. Then he saw the emergency contact, Captain Kim Hyunwoo, Chief of Colony Security. For a moment, Taeho was silent. Then his face became even angrier. "So you're the captain's daughter. That's why you think rules don't apply to you." Jisoo shook her head. "No, sir. I respect the rules. My drone made a mistake." As this happened, Jisoo's neural implant, a small computer connected to her brain, was recording everything. Most people had basic implants for education and communication. Jisoo's also had a legal database. It told her that Taeho was breaking several rules by threatening her without cause. The dog still hadn't moved to detain her. Its head tilted, showing confusion about the order. "K9, I said detain her." Taeho's face was red now. A man in the crowd called out, "Leave her alone. She's done nothing wrong." More people joined in, upset at seeing an officer bullying the young girl. Jisoo's drone returned to her side. It sensed the trouble and positioned itself between Jisoo and the dog. The drone was small, but it had protective programming. "Officer Taeho," Jisoo said, her voice surprisingly calm. "My drone has recorded this incident. You have made threats without proper cause. This violates Colony Security Code 38P. Taeho's eyes widened. How did this girl know security codes? Then he remembered. Of course, the captain's daughter would know such things. "Don't quote laws to me, modified." He spat the word like it was dirty. "Your kind is the reason this colony is falling apart. Making deals with the lizard Drakkar, changing your bodies until you're barely human." Unknown to either of them, Jisoo's drone had detected something strange in the air. A chemical compound was present in low amounts, concentrated near where Taeho had been patrolling. The drone silently collected samples. At the colony security headquarters across the city, an alert appeared on Captain Kim's screen. His daughter's neural implant had sent an emergency signal. The system showed him what Jisoo was seeing. The angry officer, the confused dog, the crowd of concerned people. Captain Kim had been meeting with 3 Drakkar representatives. The reptilian aliens had scales in different shades of green and gold. They were discussing the final details of a historic treaty. "Excuse me," Captain Kim said to the Drakkar. "There's an emergency involving my daughter." The lead Drakkar, named Srel, nodded. "Family matters are important. We understand." But as Captain Kim stood to leave, one of the Drakkar looked at the screen showing Jisoo's situation. "Is that Officer Taeho?" The Drakkar asked. "We have received several complaints about him from our people who visit the park." Captain Kim paused. This was now more than a personal matter. If Taeho had been causing problems with Drakkar visitors too, this was a diplomatic issue. "Would you like to observe how we handle this situation?" Captain Kim asked. It was a risk, but also an opportunity to show the Drakkar how fairly the colony's rules were enforced. The Drakkar looked at each other and nodded. Yes, we would find that educational. Back at the park, tensions were rising. More people had gathered, most of them supporting Jisoo. Officer Taeho felt cornered. "This is your last warning," he said to Jisoo. "Call back your drone and come with me to the station." Jisoo stood her ground. "I have broken no laws, officer. My drone accidentally entered a zone it shouldn't have. That's a minor infraction at most." "Your kind are all the same," Taeho said, "thinking you're better than normal humans because of your modifications." What Taeho didn't know was that the K9 unit was scanning him. The dog's sensors detected elevated heart rate, unusual brain activity, and chemical markers that suggested he wasn't thinking clearly. Something was affecting Taeho's judgment. The dog made a decision. It sat down, refusing the order to detain Jisoo. Taeho looked at his K9 in shock. "What are you doing? I gave you an order." Just then, a security vehicle landed at the edge of the park. Captain Kim stepped out, followed by 3 Drakkar officials. The crowd parted to let them through. Taeho's face went pale when he saw his commanding officer walking toward him, with Drakkar representatives right behind. Jisoo felt relief seeing her father, but she didn't run to him. She stood tall, handling the situation as she had been taught. Captain Kim's face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Officer Taeho, report. What's happening here?" Officer Taeho stood frozen. His captain was here with 3 Drakkar officials. The crowd watched in silence. Taeho's mind raced to find a good explanation. "Sir, I was responding to a security breach," Taeho said, pointing at Jisoo. Her drone entered a restricted area. When I asked for her ID, she was slow to comply. Captain Kim looked at his daughter. Is this true, Jisoo? Yes, father. Dot flew too high while scanning a plant. I didn't know it entered a restricted zone. When Officer Taeho asked for my ID, I gave it to him. Jisoo's voice was steady, but he called me modified like it was a bad word. He ordered his K9 to detain me before I could even explain. The K9 unit sat calmly, still refusing Taeho's earlier command. Its sensors continued to analyze the situation. One of the Drekar stepped forward. This was Strel, the lead diplomat. His green scales shimmered in the sunlight. Your security animal showed wisdom by not attacking without cause, Strel said. Most impressive. Taeho's face turned red. The K9 unit malfunctioned. It should follow orders without question. Captain Kim shook his head. No, Officer Taeho. All K9 units have ethics programming. They evaluate commands against colony law. If an order violates those laws, they can refuse. He turned to the crowd. Did anyone record this incident? Several people raised their hands and devices. Please send your recordings to Colony Security, Captain Kim said. They will help us understand what happened here. Jisoo's drone, Dot, hovered near her shoulder. It beeped twice, signaling it had important information. Father, Jisoo said, Dot detected something strange in the air around this area. It collected samples. Captain Kim nodded. Have Dot send the data to headquarters for analysis. Taeho laughed. Are you serious? The drone breaks security rules, and now you're listening to its findings. This is exactly what I mean about special treatment. The second Drekar, named Krell, tilted his head. Officer, your emotional response seems excessive for such a minor incident. May I ask how long you have been in this section of the park today? Taeho glared at the alien. 2 hours on patrol. What does that matter? The third Drekar, Troll, flicked his tongue out, tasting the air. Interesting. I detect trace compounds that should not be present in a public space. Captain Kim looked concerned. Security team to my location. Bring environmental testing equipment, he ordered into his wrist communicator. An older woman from the crowd stepped forward. Captain, I walk here every day. Officer Taeho has been getting more aggressive with people over the past week, especially those with adaptations. She pointed to her own slightly blue-tinted skin, another type of radiation protection. Captain Kim thanked the woman and turned back to Taeho. Officer, you will report to medical for a full checkup. Lieutenant Park will take your K9 unit for evaluation. This is ridiculous, Taeho shouted. You're all protecting her because she's your daughter. The modified and the aliens are ruining this colony, and you're helping them. The crowd gasped at his outburst. Even Taeho seemed surprised by his own words. Captain Kim's face remained calm, but his eyes were sad. Officer Taeho, you are suspended until further notice. Hand over your badge and weapon. 2 security officers arrived and stood on either side of Taeho. He looked around, realizing he had no choice. Slowly, he removed his badge and gun, handing them to the officers. You'll regret this, he muttered as they led him away. The K9 unit watched its handler leave, then turned to Captain Kim, waiting for new orders. Stay, Captain Kim told the dog. You did well today. The dog sat, its mechanical tail moving slightly. Jisoo approached her father. I'm sorry this became such a big problem. Captain Kim put his hand on her shoulder. This is not your fault. Something strange is happening here. More security personnel arrived with testing equipment. They began scanning the area around the bench, where Jisoo had been sitting, and the path where Taeho had patrolled. The Drekar officials watched with interest. Strel spoke to Captain Kim. Your daughter handled herself well under pressure. She knew her rights and remained calm. This shows good training. Captain Kim nodded. Jisoo wants to be a diplomat someday. She studies very hard. A wise choice, Strel said. We need more young people who understand different species and cultures. One of the security officers called out, Captain, We found something. Everyone gathered around as the officer held up a scanner. There's a chemical compound in the air here. It's concentrated near the maintenance shed. The formula is strange. I've never seen anything like it. Troll, the Drakkar with scientific training, looked at the scanner. May I? He asked, holding out his clawed hand. The officer handed him the device. Troll studied it, his vertical pupils narrowing. This appears to be a psychotropic compound. It targets certain areas of the brain associated with fear and anger. It would affect humans more strongly than Drakkar. Jisoo's drone beeped again. It projected a small hologram showing the park's maintenance schedule. How did your drone access that information? Captain Kim asked. Jisoo looked embarrassed. I may have given Dot some extra access codes for my school project on colony infrastructure. Captain Kim frowned slightly, but then nodded. We'll discuss that later. What did Dot find? The hologram showed that the maintenance shed had been serviced yesterday by someone named Lee Min-soo. But according to the schedule, no service had been planned for another week. Who is Lee Min-soo? Captain Kim asked. A security officer checked her tablet. No one by that name works for colony maintenance, sir. The pieces were starting to fit together. Someone had released a chemical in the park that made people angry and afraid, especially of those who were different. Captain, one of the officers called from inside the maintenance shed. You need to see this. Inside the small building, behind some cleaning supplies, was a black box with the company logo. Earth First Industries. Captain Kim's face grew serious. Earth First is an extremist group. They believe humans shouldn't change their bodies to live on new planets. They think we should change planets to be like Earth instead, even if that means destroying native life. Shrell asked. Yes, Captain Kim said. They see other species as less important than humans. They especially hate the idea of humans and aliens working together. Jisoo looked at the black box. So they made a chemical to make people angry at modified humans and Drakkar. Why? Captain Kim thought for a moment. Today is the final day of treaty negotiations. If there were conflicts between humans and Drakkar, the treaty might fail. Jisoo finished her father's thought. Krell, the diplomatic Drakkar, nodded. A clever plan. Create incidents that look like natural prejudice. Make both sides doubt the possibility of peace. The K9 unit suddenly stood alert, its sensors detecting something. It walked to a corner of the shed and pawed at the floor. A security officer moved some boxes and found a small door in the floor. Inside was a computer tablet. When they turned it on, they found a list of names. Officer Taiho's name was on the list, along with several other security officers and city workers. These must be people they targeted with the chemical, Captain Kim said. People with positions of authority who could cause problems if they acted on prejudice. Jisoo looked worried. Is Officer Taiho really a bad person, or did this chemical make him act that way? Captain Kim sighed. That's a good question. The chemical probably made his feelings stronger, but those feelings were already there. We'll need to test everyone on this list and help them recover. The Drakkar officials looked at each other. Shrell spoke. Captain Kim, we have seen enough. This attempt to disrupt peace has actually shown us something important. What's that? Captain Kim asked. That your security systems work well. Your daughter showed wisdom beyond her years. Even your K9 unit showed ethical judgment. And most importantly, when faced with prejudice, your people stood up against it. Shrell gestured to the crowd that had supported Jisoo. So what happens to the treaty? Jisoo asked. Shrell looked at the young human with respect. We will sign it today, as planned. And we would be honored if you would attend the ceremony, young Jisoo. Your experience today will be noted in our official report. Jisoo's eyes widened. Me? At the treaty signing? Captain Kim smiled proudly. It seems your diplomatic career is starting early. As they left the park, security teams continued to search for more evidence. The K9 unit walked beside Jisoo, seeming to have chosen her as its new person to protect. What about Officer Tahoe and the others affected by the chemical? Jisoo asked her father. They'll get medical help, Captain Kim said. And then they'll need to decide what kind of people they want to be in our new shared world. Jisoo nodded, thinking about the future, a future where humans, modified or not, and aliens like the Drakkar would need to find ways to live together in peace. Today had shown how hard that might be, but also how important. The treaty signing ceremony was set for that evening in the Grand Hall of New Seoul. Jisoo stood in front of her mirror at home, hardly believing she would attend such an important event. She wore a formal blue dress with small lights that looked like stars. "Do I look okay?" she asked her drone, Dot, which hovered nearby. The drone beeped happily, circling her once. Jisoo's mother, Sunhae, entered the room. She was a scientist who helped create the plant systems that made Novus's air breathable for humans. "You look beautiful," Sunhae said, adjusting Jisoo's collar. "Your father told me what happened in the park. I'm proud of how you handled it." "I was scared," Jisoo admitted, "but I remembered what father taught me about knowing my rights and staying calm." Sunhae nodded. "That's good. But I'm worried about this Earth First group. If they went this far to stop the treaty, they might try something else tonight. Security will be very tight," Jisoo said. "And look what Dot can do now." She tapped her drone twice. The small silver sphere expanded slightly, revealing tiny sensors all around its surface. Father upgraded Dot after what happened. It can detect those chemicals now, and other dangers too. "Clever," Sunhae said with a smile. "Now we should go. Your father is waiting." At the colony security headquarters, Captain Kim reviewed the security plans one last time. The K9 unit that had refused to attack Jisoo sat beside his desk. The dog had not wanted to leave his side since the park incident. "You're a good dog," Captain Kim said, patting its metal head. "What should we call you now?" The K9 unit's tail wagged at the attention. A security officer entered the room. "Sir, we finished questioning Officer Tahoe. The medical team confirms he was heavily exposed to the chemical compound. It's called xenophobin 7. "Xenophobin?" Captain Kim asked. "As in xenophobia, fear of strangers." "Yes, sir. It targets parts of the brain that process fear and group identity. It makes people more afraid of those who look different and more angry toward them." Captain Kim frowned. "Did Tahoe say who gave him the patrol assignment for the park?" "That's the interesting part, sir. He says it came directly from Deputy Director Choi." Captain Kim's eyes widened. Choi Jun-ho was the second highest-ranking security official in the colony, directly under him. Choi had always been professional, if a bit distant from the modified humans and Drakkar. "Bring me everything we have on Deputy Director Choi," Captain Kim ordered, and quietly doubled the security of the treaty ceremony. Jisoo and her mother arrived at the Grand Hall early. Security officers checked everyone carefully before letting them enter. Inside, the hall was decorated with symbols from Earth and the Drakkar homeworld. Jisoo's drone, Dot, stayed close to her, its new sensors actively scanning. As they walked through the hall, Dot suddenly beeped softly. "What is it?" Jisoo asked quietly. The drone displayed a small hologram showing the chemical signature, the same one from the park, but very faint. Jisoo looked around, trying to see where it might be coming from. That's when she noticed a maintenance worker adjusting an air vent. He wore the proper uniform, but something seemed off about how he moved. Nervous, checking over his shoulder too often. Jisoo remembered the fake maintenance worker name from the park, Lee Min-soo. Could this be connected? She quietly spoke to Dot. "Scan that worker and check his ID against colony records." Dot processed the request and showed Jisoo the result. "No Mayth found." Jisoo needed to tell her father, but he hadn't arrived yet. She saw a security officer she recognized, Officer Song, a woman who had always been kind to her. "Officer Song," Jisoo said, approaching her. I need to show you something important. Officer Song smiled. Jisoo, you look lovely. What is it? Jisoo had display the chemical reading, and the worker's failed ID match. Officer Song's smile disappeared. Stay here with your mother, she said firmly. I'll check this out. As Officer Song walked toward the maintenance worker, the man looked up and saw her coming. His eyes widened. Suddenly, he pulled something from his tool belt, a small silver device. Everyone down, Officer Song shouted, drawing her weapon. The maintenance worker threw the device into the air vent and ran for the exit. Officer Song tackled him to the ground. Alarms began to sound throughout the building. Security officers rushed in from all entrances. Mother, Jisoo called out, grabbing Sun Hee's hand. We need to get out. That man put something in the air system. People began moving toward the exits, but in an orderly way. The security team had trained everyone well for emergencies. Jisoo and her mother were almost to the door when Jisoo saw Srel, the Drakkar diplomat, helping an elderly human woman who was moving slowly. Go ahead, mother, Jisoo said. I need to help them. Before Sun Hee could object, Jisoo ran to Srel and the woman. This way, she said. I know a service exit that might be less crowded. Srel nodded in thanks. The three of them moved down a side hallway, Jisoo's drone lighting the way. They reached a small door just as Captain Kim's voice came over the emergency system. Attention everyone. Please evacuate calmly. The air system has been compromised. Cover your mouth and nose if possible. Jisoo tore a piece of fabric from her dress and gave it to the elderly woman. Breathe through this, she said. Srel used a cloth from his ceremonial robe to cover his own breathing slits. They made it outside to a garden area where emergency teams were setting up. Medical staff checked everyone as they exited the building. Jisoo, Captain Kim called out when he saw her. He rushed over, the K9 unit following close behind. Are you all right? I'm fine, Father, Jisoo said. Detected the chemical and spotted the fake worker. Captain Kim hugged his daughter tightly. Quick thinking. You may have saved many people. Srel approached them. Captain Kim, your daughter has proven herself twice today. She shows great promise as a future diplomat. Captain Kim nodded proudly, but his face turned serious again. We caught the man who planted the device. He's already talking. He says Deputy Director Choi is involved. Srel's scales darkened, a sign of concern among the Drakkar. You're second in command. This conspiracy runs deeper than we thought. Yes, Captain Kim agreed. The man claims Choi has been working with Earth First for months. They wanted to stop the treaty because they believe humans should not share planets with other species. Jisoo looked worried. Where is Deputy Director Choi now? That's the problem, Captain Kim said. He's disappeared. Just then, Officer Song ran up to them. Captain, we checked the security camera footage. Deputy Director Choi left the colony on a supply ship 3 hours ago, but before he left, he downloaded all our security protocols and defense plans. Captain Kim's face grew dark with concern. This isn't just about stopping the treaty. They're planning something bigger. The K9 unit suddenly perked up its ears. It turned toward a nearby building and growled. What is it, boy? Captain Kim asked. The dog ran toward the building. The Colony Communications Center. Captain Kim and 2 security officers followed. Jisoo watched them go, then turned to Srel. What do you think Earth First really wants? The Drakkar thought for a moment. From what I understand of their beliefs, they want Earth to be the only home for humans. They see colonies like this one as temporary. They want to make planets exactly like Earth, even if it means destroying native life. Like the purple plants in the park, Jisoo said. And your people's settlements here. Exactly. Srel nodded. They do not want humans to adapt to new worlds. They want to force new worlds to become Earth. A loud sound came from the communication center. Captain Kim ran out, shouting orders to his team. What happened? Sunhei asked as he rejoined them. Choi sent a message before he left, Captain Kim explained, to Earth First supporters in other colonies. He told them to launch something called Operation Homeworld. We don't know what that means, but it can't be good. Jisoo's drone beeped urgently, displaying a hologram of space around Novus. Several small ships were approaching the planet. Where did Dot get this information? Captain Kim asked, surprised. I might have given it access to the colony's defense network for my school project, Jisoo admitted. Captain Kim shook his head, but there was no time to be upset. Those are not registered ships, he said, pointing to the hologram. And they're not responding to hails. Shrell looked at the approaching ships. They appear to be terraforming vessels. They're designed to change a planet's environment. To make it more like Earth, Jisoo said, understanding dawning on her face. Operation Homeworld isn't just about stopping the treaty. They want to change Novus to be exactly like Earth, which would kill most native life. Sunhei added, her scientific knowledge making the danger clear, including the Drakkar settlements. Captain Kim's face was grim. This is no longer just a security problem. This is an act of war.